So I have a question for you. Do you manage money or does money manage you? Or another way to look at it, if you open up your wallet or your purse, how much cash have you got in there? Is that enough for you to make you feel happy? I remember one of my friends is a high-powered lawyer in Brisbane. His office is right up in the very near where God sits. And he doesn't have a view of the river, he has a view of Fiji. And he's a very generous man. Every time we went out, he'd open his wallet, he only had $100 notes. And I got to think, I don't even know how he gets that, because you can't get them out of the ATM. Or if you remember, there's a really funny skit in Seinfeld. Elaine goes up behind a guy who's at the automatic teller, and he gets his cash and he walks away, and she's checking him out. He's a bit of an all right sort, and she goes up to the teller, and the guy has left his receipt in the machine. So she picks it up, looks at the receipt, and just shakes her head and says, "Really?" she says. That's the sort of type aspect that you can have with working out if you've got money or not. Now, we can only manage money if we actually understand it. And to understand it, you need to have a financial model. Now, I have a philosophy which essentially works around assets and cash flow, and it has 4 different variants in it depending on how you manage money or whether money manages you. So come back to me with the office and we can have a look at how you can improve your cash flow and your assets so that you too can have one of these amazing units that's right on the beach at Bagara. I'll see if I can see. So yeah, these people have got it right. All right, let's go back to the office and we'll have a talk about seeing what we can do about managing money for you. Welcome back to the office. Now, as I mentioned, you can't really manage money unless you understand money. And I have a look at it from 2 points of view. Think of it as a left hand and a right hand. On one side, you've got assets, and on the other hand, you have cash flow. And when you have a good mix between the two of them, you have yourself a wealthy position. Wealthy as in you can handle the latest budget changes and taxation that's just come through, or you can have major crises come around the world. There's always a war somewhere that's affecting petrol prices and the likes of that. But when you've got a solid foundation of assets and cash flow, you can handle those things and enjoy life, at least from a financial point of view. There's obviously other things, they say it's more important than money, and there is, but I've found a lot of people who have money tend to be a little bit happier and have a better lifestyle. All right, so let's have a look at a model that I have, and it's basically just 4 quadrants. On the x-axis, we have cash flow. So on the left-hand side, there's a situation where you don't have a lot of cash, and a situation on the right-hand side when you have plenty of cash. And the y-axis, that's the one that goes up and down, for those who can't quite remember school, you have low assets in the bottom matrix and you have high assets in the top matrix. Now let's have a look at each of those one at a time. So the low cash, low asset, if you're in that category, and look, most of us are, you're going to find life is a struggle. You've got minimum cash flow, which means you're always probably going to be borrowing or paying back debt. You have a low level of financial security. Even just simple things like a car needing maintenance, or a child suddenly needing to get some extra expenses for school can put a severe strain on your financial situation for home. Likewise, if you're in a business, if you've got low assets and low cash flow, you're really in struggle city, and you've just got to work your way to get out of there. For those who are in the low assets, low cash flow, it's almost sometimes the majority of people are those who will have the tab picked up, as I say. There's a lot of government payments, a lot of government handouts. There's a lot of support from other organisations, be it private, be it personal. You may get support from your churches or your family. A lot of those are in the situation where they don't have independence. And that is one of the big factors. If you're not managing money and assets well, you don't have independence. Your life is pretty much having someone else pick up the tab, and you don't really have a lot of direction and strength and energy in your financial modelling. So we want to make sure you get out of that financial model area. So how are the ways of getting out of the situation where you've got low cash flow and low assets? The next one we have a look at is when we look at a situation of having a lot of assets but limited cash flow. So what sort of scenario does that look like? All right, so it means you don't have a lot of cash on hand. You're quite often in a liquidity crisis. You're not much different to the people in the bottom left-hand corner. You've basically got the same amount of cash. It may be a case of you open up your wallet and there's not a lot in there, and you may not have a lot of it in the bank, but you've got assets. And so you could liquidate those assets to get cash, or you may find that those assets, depending on what they are, will start to provide you with income. So if you've just bought your first commercial property, for argument's sake, you may not have a lot of income coming in yet, but you've got an asset. And if you can hold in there for 3 or 6 months and get over that initial hump of having to put expenses in there, putting a tenant in the property, those sort of type aspects, you'll find that suddenly the cash is starting to come in. And you've pulled yourself out of that bottom left-hand segment, and you're now in this situation where you've got assets and you've got a little bit of income coming in. I liken this box, I call them my millionaire pensioners. Quite often you'll find someone who's got very little money. They may be on fixed income for superannuation or from the pension, but they've got like a multi-million-dollar property, or they've got the big caravan in the car, but they haven't got the cash to get through. They're looking for the free parks as they drive around, and they're always the ones who are last to pay for a coffee. Yeah, millionaire pensioners are the ones that I call them, and every family's got a couple of those, so yeah, I love them dearly. Now let's have a look at the situation where you've got the right-hand side of the model, where you've got a fair bit of cash flow coming through. Now in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got high cash flow, low assets. So what type of scenario have we got in that situation? So you've got a consistent income. You may find, I'm just thinking, authors could be a situation where every month they're getting royalties coming through there. They haven't got a lot of assets. The book itself probably isn't much of a saleable asset, but it's bringing in income. People who have got royalties of other sorts, YouTube channels, quite often getting through there. People who are getting license fees. Term deposits would be another one, although you've got a fair bit of asset there to enable you to get the cash that's coming through. Even your kids, they're getting an allowance each week. They haven't got any assets, but they've got plenty of cash flow going through. So what's required in that situation? Well, if it's working for you, then you've got a regular, consistent cash flow coming in. You've always got money coming in, which gives you that stability. If it's not working for you, it may well be a case of feast and famine. You may find that sometimes you get a lot of cash coming in, and other times you don't have a lot of cash coming in. So you really have to manage the amount of flow of money that's coming into your purse or your wallet. If you're looking particularly at a model that's high cash, low assets, then you need to be able to scale. You need to make sure that the income stream continues to grow, because the last thing you want is that income stream to get smaller over time. That'll just provide a challenge. And that includes things like inflation, the effects of inflation, and the effects of depreciation. These are things that can affect the amount of cash, that real cash that comes into your pocket. And you can live quite happily on a cash flow model. You don't need to have a house or a business or a factory behind it. You just need to make sure you've got a consistent cash flow that comes through. Another factor on cash flow, particularly from a business, is it's generally focused on sales. So you need to always make sure you've got new customers coming in as well as existing customers. Quite often we have a look at that in the software models. If you take Xero as the first one that I thought of, it's not got a lot of assets in there, but it's pure cash flow. Every month they get $100, per user, per license, and they're constantly looking at increasing the programs, constantly looking at getting more customers, because you need to have that growth to keep the foundation of cash flow coming through. All right, now let's talk about Nirvana, the perfect scenario if you want to have a look at it. They are the people who have both assets and cash flow, and they got plenty of both. That is the best place to be, because that can handle the impacts. And like I mentioned, the impacts that will unsettle people in the bottom left quadrant don't tend to unsettle too much the people in the top section, because they've got assets and they've got cash flow. They generally have a strong income position, generally don't have a lot of debt, although that's not always the case. And they have income, plenty of income that will service that debt for you. They tend to be portfolio owners, so they may have something like a strong share portfolio, may have a property portfolio, be it residential or commercial, something that they can constantly look at the equity, and they may sell assets at a certain time just to increase and make most of the equity. That's the difference between them and the millionaire pensioners. The millionaire pensioners generally won't sell their assets, so they don't make them the most of the equity. They may have a couple of $1 million worth of equity, but no way to tap into it. It's just a lazy asset. Whereas people who have got a lot of assets and a lot of cash flow will quite often chop and change if they need to, or they may just buy and hold and continue to hold. But you'll find the difference is they'll use the equity and the increased benefits of the value of their assets, as well as making sure that there's strong growth coming through on their cash flow. People in that top right hand corner, you'll find probably have multiple income streams. They may be a business person, but you find they've probably got a self-managed super fund, they've probably got a share portfolio, they've probably got income coming in from a couple of different streams. It's very rarely a case of all the eggs in one basket. And what they will often do is look at reinvest the money. And as an example of that one, look, I took apart or took out a decent amount of money out of my business and invested it into the book that I've written. It cost me 10 grand to get that up and running. And what I've done now is the income that comes from the book, which we call as second generation income, is now being used to buy other assets and create other income. So it's generally like a snowball effect. And that is how people in that top right-hand corner work in regards to their assets and their cash flow. It's constantly building both sides of the equation. Remember that the both hands, they're using their income and their assets to increase the number of assets and to increase the number of or the amount of cash flow that comes through. Right, so it could be fine to say that the top right-hand corner is the best place, but it need not necessarily be. I've seen lots of people who live in the bottom left-hand corner, have very little assets, very little cash, who are quite happy. It's a matter of understanding and being deliberate on the financial model that you want. Success will only come if you're deliberate and you work on it. If you want to get into the millionaire pensioner, if you're a situation where you're getting a little bit senior in life and you just want security, then you need to focus on making sure that you have plenty of assets underpinning you and behind you. It may be a case for legacy and inheritance for the kids and the grandkids. So if you're looking at being in that top left-hand corner where you got a lot of assets and just enough income to get by, then you need to be strategic on that. And that is the message that I say to manage your money. You need to manage your model. So have a look at the model that you've got, and then try to structure your actions and plans in place. If you need assets, then start to save up for the assets or find a way to buy the assets. It may well be through finance or equity or vendor finance as an option for people buying businesses. There's plenty of different paths around it. But the key part that I find in any of those models, the key to success, make sure you have minimum short-term debt. Anything that's like on credit cards, it just kills you because you're not going to get the cash flow to service that debt. If you take $1,000 on your credit card and you put it in shares, you're going to get 8% on your shares, but your credit card's going to cost you 20%. So kill your short-term debt and make sure you constantly save, even if it's only 5 or 10% of your income each week or each month, whenever you get paid. Having that saving and being proactive in your model, set that aside to buy some assets. Life wasn't meant to be complicated. Low debt, keep your savings, invest in assets. All right, that's my methodology on managing your finances. Don't let your finances manage you. All right, take care and God bless. This is Peter Bender from Bundaberg Commercial.